Bitcoin is the most important topic, most important discovery in the universe. Nobody is bullish enough. People cannot grasp how big the opportunity of Bitcoin actually is. It's not just 8 billion people that will compete for the 21 million Bitcoin. It's also 185 nation states. How many companies there are? They will all want Bitcoin. We'll also have billions of AI agents that all want to get paid in Bitcoin. Bitcoin might be the next world reserve currency. What else would I buy? But I'm not risking losing out on one Bitcoin being like $100 million. Why would I do that? If you want to save something for 100 years, 200 years, you want something nobody can control, nobody can print more of. And then the question is like, what are you going to do? What an amazing intro to this podcast. I unfortunately cannot take credit for this. This was the work of John that hosted the podcast where I was guest on. And this was one of my most favorite episodes I've ever been on featured. So I was like, I should share that with you because I think you will really enjoy what we have talked about and where the conversation went. So please go ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy this 1 hour of podcast.
All right, Robin Seyr, this is awesome. I'm a huge fan of yours. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here.
So for getting me on, sorry.
Right. Yeah. You're used to being on the other side. So for anyone who doesn't know, Robin does an interview show on YouTube. He interviews a Bitcoiner every day, 365 days out of the year. So check that out if anyone hasn't seen it. I'm sure most people have seen it because you've been out there doing it for a while. But thank you so much for being on. We'll talk a little bit more about that part later. But the first question is, Robin, what's your favorite thing about Bitcoin?
The favorite thing about Bitcoin is something that also annoys me at Bitcoin sometimes. It is something, I'm getting to it, but the favorite thing about Bitcoin is that we are early, that it's so obvious and still nobody gets it. It's my favorite and my least favorite thing at the same time. The favorite thing it is because it gives us the opportunity to get in very, very cheaply. Everything under $1 million is very, very cheaply, in my opinion. So we are far away from any price where I'm like, oh, like it's now not cheap anymore. And at the same time, it's so obvious that it will actually happen. But this is also annoying sometimes because you get that future of Bitcoin, you get where it's going, and it's so obvious to you. And then you go out in the outside of Bitcoin world and you come to know that people are not where you are. They are at 2-3% of Bitcoin understanding, and you might already be at 40-50% of Bitcoin understanding, which is pretty high. I think nobody gets above 60-70% of Bitcoin understanding. So like 40-50% is already really high. And this is just my favorite thing to talk about in Bitcoin because it shows we are super early. It's still a very small asset, and we might. And that window of being early might be 2 years, might be 20 years. We don't know. But I think there is a tipping point coming, and the tipping point is faster and faster approaching. The more and more speculative attacks on Bitcoin are being made. The first one with MicroStrategy, then like 21 Capital, on the corporate side. But now even Trump is saying like, we have to do it because otherwise China will do it. He's pushing forward here. No clue what China and Russia is doing on the back end, not without telling people. Then we have individuals there are so many individuals that take out credit to buy Bitcoin. And the more and more people that do that, the tipping point where the US dollar is completely worthless and Bitcoin is the only asset that is everything is pricing at. That tipping point, I think, will come faster and faster. Maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 20 years. I don't know. But it's fun to be a commentator and host in that space.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I mean, I agree with you, right? It's such a strange phenomenon to be in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Twitter and all these things, all these people who believe in it and think it's the future. And then, like you said, you step one toe outside of that into sort of, anything considered normal investing world, whether it be Reddit or Twitter or whatever, and they're immediately like, that's a scam, you're an idiot. You're like, the push and pull dichotomy between those two things is very strange. Do you have thoughts on like why that is, why it seems to be so sort of all or nothing? People either kind of totally get it or think it's a total scam?
There's two sides to it. when we look at history and innovation and before already that kind of shifted everything, like the printing press, electricity, the internet, this shifts the way how things are done. There was a point in time where 80% of the working force was farmers. When then the tractor comes along and makes things way more efficient, the people on the farm are like, oh shit, what are we going to do? What are we going to work in the future? So with every invention, there is a big shift, a big change coming. And there are people that like change, that thrive on change. Those are the innovators, the pioneers, the early adopters. That's basically us, everyone that is watching and listening here, because you are really early to that one. And then there are also the critical people. And with every new innovation, every new company, with everything that is coming up new, this thing has to prove itself way more than the incumbent system. For example, Bitcoin has to always make everything perfect. It has to be also perfect on the, let's say, quantum computing resistance. Has anyone ever thought about if their bank account is quantum computer resistant? Like, nobody questions that, but the same guy that has 100% in his bank account of his financial energy asked that, oh, but when quantum computers come along, Bitcoin will be doomed. Yeah, like you have 100% in a bank account that someone could easily hack. I come from IT security. Those banks are not safe at all. So it's always the informed versus the uninformed. Those who are informed have a need to know. Those who are actually did the proof of work to dig into Bitcoin have an extreme advantage over those who don't do the hard work in digging into Bitcoin. I don't know about you, but it took me a long time to get over the thing that Bitcoin is not a scam. So when people then say on the one hand, oh, we are super, super bullish on Bitcoin, and the other side, I hate Bitcoin, it consumes all the energy, it will be deflationary, it will delete all our, yeah, I mean, of course, they're right with the inflationary stuff, but those people just didn't do the work why a deflationary system is better, why Bitcoin is so superior to a bank account, to real estate, to whatever you want to compare it to, as an asset, as a medium of exchange, and as a unit of account. So the shift or the imbalance between the ones that get it and the ones who don't get it is because it is changing so much in society. It will have such a huge impact on how we, like, Bitcoin is money, and money is literally in everything we do. That there isn't a day where I don't do anything with money. There is always either I buy a small thing, I earn something, I have some exchange, I go for dinner, whatever. Like, it's really hard to have a day where there's no money involved in that day. So having to change that fundamentally will change things in your life. And this is scary for people. And that's just the paradigm shift that we are living through. And it's normal that people tend to be extreme in those times. I've not met a lot of people that say, "Yeah, I don't care about Bitcoin." It's like they either hate it or they love it, but some are just didn't do a research. There are some honest people that say, "Oh, I don't want to form an opinion on something that I haven't dig into," and they're just neutral to it because they didn't do any research on it. But those people are getting less and less and less because you have to do research. Like either you're not researching and you just on the I hate it and don't want to look into it, or you are on the side where you research it because now it's not just a small plaything anymore. The biggest companies on the world, the biggest country in the world, they're all looking into it. So you should also look into it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think the irony that Warren Buffett, like, long ago he said, like, I don't understand technology, so I don't invest in technology. Like, I don't invest in Apple because I don't understand it. which was like, okay, that's at least, you can't fault him for putting it that way. But ironically, him and what's his name, Charlie Munger, didn't do that with Bitcoin. They didn't say, oh, I don't understand it. They just said, oh, it's definitely a rat poison. It's definitely a scam. Don't go near that. And I'm like, well, you haven't even bothered to look into it for 2 seconds, right? You've said it a couple times that you think we're still really early. So like, what do you say to people? I mean, I think the entire history of Bitcoin, people have thought they were late. We've seen people who like, oh, I only have 8,000, 10,000 Bitcoin. I'm so late. It's already worth $1. I'm so late. We see those tweets from a decade ago. What do you think, or what do you say to people when they're like, oh, it's 100K, like I'm way too late?
There is a time and place when you will be too late to Bitcoin, and it's the time when you are no longer able to buy Bitcoin with US dollar or fiat currencies. That's the time when you're definitely too late. Maybe a little bit beforehand also, but that time is far away in terms of how much Bitcoin will run up. In terms of how much time is left, I already teased it before. With 2 years, 20 years, it's really hard to say. It's about, will that tipping point happen very gradually and slowly, or will we just people lose trust in the system and we go off in a how's this Samson Mao, like the God candle? I don't know. So there's 2 questions I still don't know in Bitcoin. There's a lot of things that I know that we come to that system, but it's a question of how fast we will get to Bitcoin standard and how exactly we will get there. Either it will be peacefully or it will be kind of an revolution, rebellious times where there is and war in some form. It doesn't have to be a physical war, but it has to be some kind of war in some sense. So those questions are harder to answer because there's so many variables at play, and anyone who claims to know exactly when Bitcoin will take off and how Bitcoin will take off just doesn't know what he's talking about. He probably wants to scam you. But outside of those questions, it's more to know about where directionally are we going towards. And if you just give Bitcoin, let's say, a 5 to 10% chance that Bitcoin will actually be the next world reserve currency, the next Bitcoin standard, you have to look into this. You cannot not look in it. It's so abundantly clear that the possibility of Bitcoin becoming that is greater than 0. So you should do at least your homework to get there. But back to your question, what are you saying? Like, why are you feeling late? If you have bought in, because people always compare those prices that we are currently in. So they're looking, oh, I could have bought at 50,000, but now it's like 96,000 or something like that. So they feel late. It's the same thing as someone said, oh, I could have bought at $120, but now it's $300. Now I'm late to Bitcoin. I don't want. We have all seen that tweet that's saying like, oh, I only have 20,000 Bitcoin and I've missed the boat on it. So I'm selling all my 20,000 Bitcoin. And then 8 years, 10 years later, they're like, oh shit, I cannot even afford one whole Bitcoin. And I had 20,000 at one point. So you come to the conclusion that, yes, I need Bitcoin. Bitcoin might be the next standard, it might be the next world reserve currency. And when you come to that conclusion that Bitcoin is the next world reserve currency, you also kind of come to the conclusion of what else would I buy? If not Bitcoin, and those Bitcoiners who are really deep in Bitcoin can probably relate, what would I sell it for? You come to a family dinner and someone says like, oh, wouldn't it be good if you kind of diversify into real estate a little bit to buy yourself a home for your family? I'm like, it's not a bad idea, but I'm not risking selling one Bitcoin now to get a down payment for a home that I want. I mean, now you probably can get a down payment for like 0.5 Bitcoin. And then losing out on one Bitcoin being like $100 million. Like, why would I do that? I can buy a city with 1 Bitcoin at some point. so why would I pay now the down payment on one singular house? I rather rent a few more years. Like that does not make sense for me. If you want it emotionally, that's fine. Like if you have a Bitcoin stack and emotionally you have to buy a house, then go ahead and do it. Just know it's a bad financial decision. Don't argue with like, oh, it's diversification, or it's a good financial decision. No, like selling Bitcoin and buying real estate is a bad decision. Selling Bitcoin to buy anything except Bitcoin is probably a bad decision financially. So I came to the conclusion that we are super early. Most people don't get it. Most people still don't have a need to know about Bitcoin. And most people will know it once the tipping point is reached, right around the tipping point, 1 year before it till 1 year after the tipping point. That's where like 80% of people will come. Even if you're at like, and then I talked about that at length at other podcasts, even if we are at 90% Bitcoin, even if we are at $1 million Bitcoin, 90 to 95% of the population will still don't know what Bitcoin is. They might have it in some exposure. They might have some Bitcoin ETF as a diversifier, 5% in their portfolio. But the most of the price action comes first from the retail crowd. And even if it reaches high, there's only a small group of people that actually understand Bitcoin and actually does the work. I don't think we will ever get to a point where the sound economics, why Bitcoin works, will get mainstream. Bitcoin will get mainstream, but nobody will know how it works. Like, nobody will care about UTXO management. We care about UTXO management right now. And I can guarantee you there's like 50% of the audience right now that's asking like, what is UTXO management? You would be astonished how less people that watch Bitcoin podcasts sometimes know about Bitcoin. I watched Bitcoin podcasts for 2-3 years, and I still didn't know about UTXO management. I learned it very late. So even within the Bitcoin crowd, there are a lot of things that people don't know about Bitcoin. And I have so many gaps in my knowledge on Bitcoin. I'm still, I've interviewed now almost 500 different guests. And I learn every day something new about Bitcoin. It's crazy for me how deep that rabbit hole is. So the point I kind of wanted to make is we're early and not a lot of people get it. And this information asymmetry is huge, so huge that you kind of wonder, why am I seeing that and other people don't? Like, who am I? Like, why was I so lucky to stumble upon Bitcoin right now? That's I forgot your initial question, but that is
no, you nailed it. Yeah, you nailed it. No, I mean, I feel the same way sometimes. Like, yeah, when you step outside the bubble and you see everybody hating on it or dismissing it, and you think, wait, this is so strange. Am I wrong? And then try to steel man the arguments, and then you like always come back to like, no, I think they just, like you said, haven't thought about it. They haven't done the work. Like you talked about the farmer and the tractor, right? And I've seen this one on Twitter where it's like Fifth Avenue in New York in like 1903, and it's like all horses, horse-drawn carriages, and then a decade later, and it's all same picture, same spot, and it's all cars, one horse. And you're like, so you talked about, well, the only thing we don't know is how fast it'll happen, right? But I think you kind of made this point too, which is super interesting, is that it seems like it's going really slow and most people don't get it. But when a new technology that is that much better comes along, it can happen all at once.
It's that tipping point question, where once we reach that tipping point, it could go really, really fast, especially with money, because if people lose trust in their money and this spreads like wildfire, like, oh, did you hear hyperinflation, US dollar? You still have 10,000 euros in the bank account? Get rid of it. Buy some Bitcoin. That is wildfire. Once trust, like right now, the euro, the US dollar, the yen, all of those currencies still work because majority of people still trust them. That's the only reason they can print so much money, because people trust in those systems and in those fiat currencies. If that trust is gone and they're trying to print the last currencies out to get a little bit purchasing power for the governments, they will completely erode the US dollar, it can completely erode the fiat currencies, and it can go very, very quickly. That's my theory, that it will go very quickly. As we've seen with the car, it's an amazing picture, seen first all the horses and then one car and then only cars with like 1-2 horses. And the horse might always be around. I live in Vienna. In the middle of Vienna, there are horse carriages on a Sunday afternoon where the tourists come and drive with the horse carriage through the city. But it's like 0.01% of the industry that is driving around in Vienna through the museums and stuff like that and the palaces in the horse carriage. It's a fun thing to do. In the same way, maybe fiat is always existing in form of a government token that you use to pay your taxes, or to get social insurance. If you are if you're out of job, you maybe get a government token, and as soon as you get it, you quickly convert it to Bitcoin. Like there might still be fiat around. When I'm saying fiat is gone, I'm saying 99% of people, businesses and countries and everything like that, and individuals will operate on a Bitcoin standard, meaning 80% plus will be in Bitcoin saved and not into fiat currencies, and also not into the stock market. Like the stock market is something for investors. People forgot that we have a stock market that is used for saving, but it's called investing, not saving. Bitcoin is saving. This is where 80% of your money should be. Then you should have 20% where you maybe speculate. But most people will have 100% in Bitcoin. Some people will have only 50% in Bitcoin and speculate with more because they're angel investors. They seek risk. That's a profession. Like being an investor takes time. You have to understand the business. You have to understand the ins and outs. So this will only be a very small percentage. Most people will be better off just doing Bitcoin. It's already happening right now, and it will be happening in the future too.
You talked about the trust piece, right? Like, and when that starts to break down, I don't necessarily, like you said, think, government fiat or US dollar is going to go away overnight, but seems to me like in an interesting moment right now where there is some degree of trust of the US dollar breaking down. Like, it still fascinates me that with zero interest rate policy since 2008, this basically people still consider US Treasury bonds risk-free. When it's like they don't pay interest and there's nothing but inflation and they're still risk-free. That fascinates me. But still seems like we're at a place where internationally there's some trust in the US dollar as the global reserve currency, the Treasury as the global reserve asset sort of breaking down. Do you feel like that is true right now, or are we just too deep in the weeds, or do you think that has a lasting effect going forward?
I just want to throw a story in there. I was actually last week on holidays in Albania, and Austria has the euro, Albania has the leke. I don't know if there's an English word for that, but it's basically 1 to 100. So like 1 euro is like 100 leke there. So you deal with those bills that have like 1,000 written on them, and it's actually not 1,000, it's like 10 euros. And it kind of made me aware of, if you come from a country where you always dealt with the euro. So I'm born 1998. The euro was introduced in Austria, I think 2001. So since I'm 3 years old, I can think, I always dealt with the euro as my main unit of account. So that's how my real money kind of looks. But once you get out of the system and go to another place, being it the US dollar, being it the Albanian lek, being it the Turkish lira, being whatever currency it is, you almost have this intuition of like, that's play money. Like I get 100, I have a 10,000 or 50,000 lek in my hands right now. Like, what is that? Someone wrote 50,000 on there. Like, why does this have value? Why do people accept that? and it's all about the trust. So I'm not a macro guy. I'm not. I think every fiat currency probably will go to shit. So this is the long-term thing. But if I had to guess, if I pull all my knowledge from the 500 Bitcoiners that I've interviewed and asked those questions a lot also, I think the US dollar will be the last currency standing. I think we will use the US dollar in Europe, in Russia, and maybe in other places. There might be a second one. Maybe there's a third one. Maybe Russia uses something else. Maybe BRICS is coming up with something. Maybe China uses their own currency. But there's not place for 150 currencies. Like 150 is, especially when we have stable coins and blockchain technology. I just have to make sure I'm Bitcoin only. Like I hate cryptos. I hate stable coins. But they definitely globalize fiat currencies more easily. So with stablecoins, all of a sudden the US dollar is available everywhere, and you can pay and earn in stable coins. So we will have a future where there might be just 2 or 3 around. Think about that. Think about, and I don't know where I heard it. I think it was some Twitter story. Think about there are aliens coming to Earth, and they're asking, how do you communicate value? I'm like, yeah, we use currency for it. And they're like, okay, what is currency? And you're like, yeah, it's basically money. So we're using it to buy and earn stuff. Oh, okay. And how's it called? Yeah, it depends where you are. Oh, how many are there? 2, 3? No, we have like 155 different currencies, and there's like a market where you can trade in it, and there's like a whole industry just around how those currencies interact with each other. For an alien, it would look so stupid and so inefficient that we are not that many humans. We're like 8 billion people. Like we're not that big and that important that we need 155 different currencies. That's a weird period of time that we're living in. So it obviously will consolidate. If it all goes to the US dollar, or it all goes to like maybe 3, 4 different currencies, it's hard to say. Maybe we live in a medium time where there's like 2 or 3 main currencies that are used before we come to the actual Bitcoin standard, where then Bitcoin is kind of the main currency and asset, and then each country has their own small little tokens that they also use to interact with with their governments and stuff like that. This could happen, but as I said, like I don't want to claim to have all my knowledge with macroeconomics. I just know it will be very obvious why we have to bet on Bitcoin and not on anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I love your story about the euro, right? I think that is so fascinating that like most people, especially in the US, probably don't even realize, like you said, well, the euro only started being used in Austria in 2001, I think. So it's like 24 years that the euro has been the unit of account and the main currency in Austria, maybe in other parts of Europe a little before that, but like the euro is like 25 years old. So much of criticism that I see about Bitcoin is people just saying like, oh, well, it'll never compete with the dollar, or like Bitcoin's not a unit of account, the dollar is a unit of account. Like they just don't understand how these things work, and the fact that the euro didn't exist and then all of a sudden one day it did exist. That doesn't mean the euro always will exist or always will be the unit of account. It's like shows you that it can change. And like you said, I think it's fascinating that if you think of the internet as this thing that's sort of breaking down borders globally, right? It's commerce across borders, like the imaginary lines on the map don't matter nearly as much in the age of the internet. Why won't that also be true of money? Like you said, like how long can these countries keep their little fake monopoly monies alive within these imaginary lines on the map when you have a global world that's becoming more borderless and now a money that's completely borderless that none of them can control?
I have my small little podcast production team, and we are on 3 different continents. And it works seamlessly. You can work together, and we even pay each other, not all of them, but some of them in Bitcoin. So you have a communication layer of the internet where you can zoom to each other. You have a payment layer with Bitcoin where you can transact value to each other, and you just have all those communication and value layers to each other. And then is the question, why do we need those borders? Yeah, maybe it's good to have physical protection borders and people can choose where to live. But what's the real role of government once Bitcoin is a standard? Are they going to be a service center for maintaining roads, maintaining hospitals, and maintaining a safety net for less fortunate people? I think that's where we might go, where we all pay a small tax to contribute to roads, to contribute to a safety net for less fortunate people. So I'm not completely capitalist, where I'm like, governments completely will go away. I think there is some need for some central entity that provides for people as a service center. That could also be a private institution. And then it's like, okay, what's the difference between private and public if there is no buying power from the government? Like they cannot print money. At that point, they are also private. So like what differentiates like a public institution from a private institution? Because they're gonna print money. Maybe there's some sort of membership. So I think we will see the sovereign individual basically playing out. I mean, most Bitcoiners have read that or are aware of that theory of the sovereign individual, and that's what we already see playing out. But it will take some time. It's not overnight. The internet is also not finished. People are like, oh, like the internet, but we need to build a lot more to make also the internet maybe more decentralized, more robust, more private in some regards. We need to build out the payment layer for the internet, which is Bitcoin, which is Lightning, which is Fedimint, which is all the great things that happen on layer 2 of Bitcoin and maybe layer 3 also. So we have a long ways to go, but it's so exciting to live in that world. And then there's coming AI and robotics into the place where I'm like, okay, how will this impact the working place? How much work do we need to actually do in the future? Let's come back to the tractor example and the farmers. Now I see AI actually making really good work. I can have less employees because the employees have AI, and AI makes each employee more efficient. So why do I need 3 people? Maybe one that is highly skilled with AI can do the same job of previously 3 people. And maybe AI gets so good that I don't even need that one person. I just have an AI agent out there. Let's make an example. I have Eclipse channel. The Eclipse channel is just recently started, and I didn't have the time to do it myself. So I hired someone. And he is doing a great job. And I just basically said to him, oh, I would like it that it looks like that a little bit, and you should do this and that. So like I had kind of some inputs that I gave him for the Eclipse channel. And then he just went on and did his thing, and he's doing an amazing job. I can also tell an AI agent the inputs. And the AI agent also pulls resources of the internet and can figure out what to do, what's the best job. It's not quite there yet, and it's also expensive. So we're not quite there yet in that future, but we will get there. And once we get there and we don't have to work anymore because AI is taking up the work, what are humans left to do? What does value mean in that world? And I think in that world, it will increasingly get more important to have something that AI also wants, which is Bitcoin. What currency will AI choose? What asset will AI, because that AI agent has to be paid because he needs to run his electricity and his internet bill. So he needs to get money for the tasks he's doing. So we have to pay him, and we will pay him in Bitcoin. If you already ask AI what's the perfect money, he will basically describe you now what Bitcoin is. AI will figure out that it will need Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value. So AI will demand Bitcoin. People will demand Bitcoin. It will be a huge, and that's why I'm also saying nobody is bullish enough, because people cannot grasp how big the opportunity of Bitcoin actually is, because not just 8 billion people that will compete for the 21 million Bitcoin, it's also the 185 nation states that will compete for each Bitcoin. But it also is I don't know how many companies there are. Actually, I've never looked it up how many companies there are on the world, but I guess a few 100,000 companies there will be, maybe in the millions. That's actually interesting. I have to look that up later. How many companies there are in the world? They will all want Bitcoin. And then we'll also have AI agents, like billions of AI agents that all do a small little task that also want to get paid in Bitcoin. So this, and then we may come to a point where we find other planets and they also want Bitcoin. So this thinking of like, oh, once we had like 10 million, Bitcoin is kind of at a peak. No, we are not. Humanity is not at a peak, and Bitcoin will also not be at a peak, because we'll always get more efficient. We'll also always get bigger. We always get more creative in doing things. So Bitcoin will always grow with us. Yeah, maybe if Bitcoin is 90%, 95% adopted and we are at like 150 million, at that point, nobody will compare Bitcoin to US dollar anymore. But let's say it would have the purchasing power of like 150 million. At that point, we will have such a huge value in Bitcoin that it might make sense to not diversify, but find a faster horse. Maybe there's a new technology coming along that I want to invest in. So that might be a thing that I'm also looking at. Hey, when Bitcoin is completely boring and everyone gets it, maybe on my podcast, I'm talking about something else, and I'm investing also like 20% of my Bitcoin in something else because it's more exciting. But it's not in competition with the best store of value, best medium of exchange, and best unit of account, which is Bitcoin. It is just in competition with the people that seek out more, that seek out a yield on top of Bitcoin, that seek out, oh, how do I get with investing more Bitcoin? Every investment, the hurdle rate of Bitcoin, that the hurdle rate of investment will change to whatever Bitcoin grows at. So you will ask yourself the question, do I really want to put money there if it doesn't outperform Bitcoin? If I have less Bitcoin than before, why should I invest in this? If I have more Bitcoin than before, then I invest in this. And how likely is it to succeed? Every investment will be viewed through the hurdle rate of Bitcoin. So it's just tremendous.
Well, and the thing you were talking about AI and robotics is something I'm totally fascinated by. And lately I've been like digging into this more and more. Like you said, of what currency will AI want to use, which, like, speaking of the borderless thing, like, you think an AI agent wants to get paid in, like you said, like the Turkish lira, and then have to, in the background, figure out how to swap it for US dollar. Like, that's silly. Like, of course AI wants to be paid in a global, neutral, borderless, permissionless world reserve currency that is a native value transfer protocol to the internet itself, right? Not a thing that it's like, oh, it has to deal with banks and just kind of a silly idea. But even beyond what will AI want to be paid in, this idea that you talked about of what happens when AI and robotics can do most of the labor that humans do now. I think this is sort of a Jeff Booth idea where I first heard it. I've heard it in other places too. And it's kind of a hard concept to really wrap your mind around. But in my opinion, in my understanding, it's sort of like, if AI and robotics can do most of the labor that humans do now, human labor becomes essentially economically unprofitable. So we all basically lose our jobs. Well, what does the government probably do? They step in and print money to help everyone. But by printing money, they devalue everything you have that's fiat savings or fiat earnings or denominated in fiat. Therefore, the Bitcoin is the only thing that's going to save you from that world or maintain its purchasing power value, real value in that world.
Let's take a break for a moment and appreciate the beauty that Coin Vigilante has made with the Bitcoin watches. Those watches are the most amazing, the most elegant way of showing that you are a true Bitcoiner. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there, and of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. And now if you have Bitcoin, I really do hope that you don't have it on exchange. But if you do have it on exchange, I have two ways for you to deal with that. The first way is you put it on a hardware wallet. That's the entry for you to get into the self-custody game. I recommend BitBox, Bitcoin only edition for that. It's a super simple and secure way. And if you check out the link in the description, you even get 5% off if you use the code Robin. And the second way is the Bitcoin Way. The Bitcoin Way is your all-in partner in terms of how to get the most out of your sovereignty. They will personalize for you a self-custody setup that is perfect for your individual situation. They will show you how you can secure your own devices. Securing your Bitcoin is not enough. You also have to keep all your devices secure. One topic that is overlooked often is the inheritance plan. What happens with your Bitcoin once you are no longer here? Do you have a plan for that in place already? And last but not least, if you're in jurisdictions where you don't feel safe, it's better to get a plan B. For all that, head over to thebitcoinway.com/Robin to get a 30-minute free call. And just a quick side note, I will be for the first time ever speaking at the Bitcoin Prague event in June. It will be absolutely legendary and I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you there. You can get your ticket in the link down in the description of Bitcoin Prague, and very important, use code Robin to get 10% off your ticket. I'm really looking forward seeing you there. Bitcoin will be the only thing that is actually connected to a proof of work system. If you think about it from first principles, if you want to save something for the future, for 100 years, 200 years, 2,000 years in the future, for the next generations, you want something that nobody can control, nobody can print more of, and is actually connected to something in the real world, to energy. That's why we have the proof of work mechanism to protect the network. That's why we have the full node operators to protect the network. So there's basically two things going on. The first thing in Bitcoin is that it is transferring value over time. So you will have you will be able to get your financial energy across multiple decades, maybe hundreds of years and future generations. This impacts how we think about it today, because it's not only that, because people always tell me, but I will be dead in 50 years. First of all, you don't know that. Medical things also evolve. Maybe your head is will get screwed on a robot. You have no clue what the future brings. How do you know that you are dead in 50 years? I don't know if I'm dead in 50 years. I would still be considered normal human age in 50 years because I'm young. But even in 500 years, I might be still alive. So that's the first thing. You want to grab something that potentially is there for 2,000 years, because it will be also better in 10 years if it will last 2,000 years, because more people will decide for that. Then you will also have something that can float around freely through space. That's the second thing, time and space that we're always talking about. You don't want something, try to carry a gold bar through an airport and not declare it. They will arrest you right there. Like they will get your gold. They will take your gold. They will assume that you're a criminal, and they will ask you all kinds of questions. And yes, you will spend it maybe even a day in prison. I don't know. Go with 20,000, let's say $200,000 in cash over the borders, and not declare it. Like you will get in troubles. You cannot carry that much cash with you. If you go with $2 billion in Bitcoin over the borders, nobody even knows. You can save it in your head, like you can save it in your brain. I mean, it's a very risky thing to do, saving $2 billion in your head, but you can do it. So the only thing that transport through space and time efficiently is Bitcoin. And then the question is like, what are you gonna do? Are you embracing it or are you hating on it? Because hating on it is unproductive. It's something that will not yield you, your family, or anyone any results. In fact, it will accelerate Bitcoin adoption. If you're hating on Bitcoin and you're actively telling people about Bitcoin, people will wonder why you hate on Bitcoin so much. And all of a sudden, they're researching Bitcoin. I got orange pilled. One of the people at Orange Pill me is Peter Schiff. He talks a lot about Bitcoin. He's orange pilled probably like 200 times more people than I did with a pure Bitcoin only focus, just because he is such a big reach and he's using his reach to orange pill people. I don't know if he wants that, but he definitely does. I had a university professor that has a lecture on IT security, and he always starts his lecture with lecturing people about how bad Bitcoin is. He doesn't need to mention Bitcoin at all, but there's an audience sitting of 2,000 people that now is asking, why is he talking about Bitcoin now? Am I not in IT security? Like, I want to learn about IT security and not about Bitcoin. But I guess I'll Google it, what Bitcoin is. I guess I'll look it up. And from those 2,000 people, 1,000 people don't listen to him anyways. They're just staring on the screen and trying to get through it. Then there's 500 people that are like, of course, Bitcoin, it's a bad thing. I heard it also in the news. I also heard it in mainstream media. But there's like at least 20 to 50 people that say like, oh, okay, like what is actually Bitcoin? Like, I never heard about that. They're researching, they're going down the rabbit hole. And from those 20 people, maybe 2 are like, hey, I really like Bitcoin. And all of a sudden, this one hater produced like 50 Bitcoiners. Hating on Bitcoin is actually improving the system. It does not only sharpen the knives of all the Bitcoiners out there, because we get bad arguments, we can see how we can tackle those bad arguments, but it also produces real Bitcoiners that are out there and then are actually accelerating the mission. It's the same thing. There was a very famous song in Germany 2 years ago that got banned, Layla. I don't know if you know about that song. And because of the content of the song, it's about prostitutes, whatever, the song got banned. I don't even know it was somewhere in Europe it got banned. Because it got banned, it was the most famous song in this year. And I was living in Munich at that time, and I went to the Oktoberfest. Probably most people are aware Oktoberfest is a huge thing where people drink a lot of beer. And this song was in every tent, every hour. I hated that song so much just because you heard it everywhere. And it was a bad song. Like it was not something, it was not a fun, like I didn't like the song. But I kind of liked the message of it. Because it was banned, now everyone was playing that song. It's the same thing when I say, do not think about a blue elephant right now. Do not think. Like, you will think about a blue elephant. Like, how does a blue elephant actually look? Are all elephants blue? No, they're actually gray. They're not blue. So like, the haters are just accelerating the actual Bitcoin adoption with giving Bitcoin more airtime. And at that point, if I would sit now in this university seminar and there's like 2,000 people and someone is talking trash about Bitcoin, I would love that, because he doesn't need to speak about Bitcoin. He's advertising it and he doesn't even like it. There are orange pillars, there are advertisers for Bitcoin that hate the asset. How amazing is that? People that like it and people that hate it are all advertising for Bitcoin. It's the whole game theory aspect. And we talked about before that there's no one in the middle. There's people that really like it, they advertise it, they go around like maniacs to the family members like, hey, you have to buy it, like myself. And there are other people that hate it and they say to everyone like, do not buy it. But the human brain doesn't understand don't. It's actually really funny. We do not process the don't. We only hear what we hear. The human brain, if you like, don't press that button, we only hear press that button. So if someone says like, do not buy Bitcoin, the only thing that the human brain really remembers is buy Bitcoin. So if just a small brain trick, if you want to remember something, don't forget to pack the passport. Say, you have to remember getting the passport. It's easier for the brain to understand. Sorry, a small detour.
No, that's why.
but the important thing is that there are on the left side, on the right side, or like whatever, like pro Bitcoin and against Bitcoin, both are advertising Bitcoin, and this makes the whole thing more airtime. So it's a no-brainer for me.
It's sort of the everything is good for Bitcoin kind of meme, right? Meets the all publicity is good publicity sort of saying, right? And it's like, I kind of think that's a great way to put it. I've never really heard it put that way, but that's really funny how even people who are hating on it are trying to, go in front of 2,000 students for no good reason, talking crap about Bitcoin. I think as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, ultimately the reason for that is that Bitcoin is truth. And if the truth is sitting there, no matter how many people are sort of saying, oh, that's not true, more and more people are going to look at it and go, well, are they right? Is that true? Is that not true? And more and more people look into it. And from what I've seen, the vast majority of people who actually take the time to look into Bitcoin, most people hate it, just haven't studied it. There's probably a small percentage of people who have looked into it a little and they still hate it. But most people who look and even try to prove prove themselves right? They might be like, I hate Bitcoin. I'm going to look into it to prove why it's wrong. And then they look into it and they go, wait a second. I can't prove that it's wrong, or I can't prove that it's a scam, right? Or I can't prove why it has no value. So they eventually come to the truth.
That's literally my orange pilling journey. I wanted to prove someone wrong. And I got orange pilling that. But it's a really important point to make why Bitcoin is so powerful, because it also has no head that you can actually attack. So this is the number one reason why Bitcoin is working, because I think there is such a thing as bad publicity. If there's a head to attack, if there is a CEO that is attackable and saying like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you like, as long as there's no head to attack, every publicity is really good for it. Because at some point, 2017, where was Bitcoin mania, in my opinion, retail mania. This was where the highest point in the Google Trends were, where like Bitcoin was in everyone. And this tipping point will be reached again with complete FOMO of retail. But we haven't been there since 2017. At some point will that tipping point come and that FOMO point come where everyone talking about Bitcoin on the pro and on the contra side. And someone that is just not aware about Bitcoin will ask himself, why is everyone talking about Bitcoin? Like, why do I hear about Bitcoin all day long? They will research about it. And the research is super simple. Like, if you imagine 2010, 2012, 2015 even, it was super hard to get any Bitcoin information out there. Now in 2025, 10 years later, We have like, I don't know, 50, 100, 200 Bitcoin only podcasts, not Bitcoin and crypto, like Bitcoin only podcasts and content creators that are really good. Imagine in 10 years, we will have thousands of information warriors that will be out there and create content for Bitcoin, make courses, make books, make articles, make digestible small snippets of content that will completely revolutionize how fast we will get orange pilled. I met people in 2025 that got orange pilled in 2025 and understand more about Bitcoin in the first 2 months of learning that I understood in the first 2 years. People are getting orange pilled way faster nowadays because the material is just so much better. And this will only accelerate. The faster we'll orange pill people, the more people will come on podcasts, the more people will start podcasts, start TikTok channels, start whatever they want to start, blogs, articles, books. And the more people will, it's a complete exponential growth thing at that point. So just look out 10 years from now and you will be astonished how everyone is talking about Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I agree with you that like the acceleration of the knowledge, and yeah, probably, a decade ago it was much harder to kind of just, the information's out there, but it's much harder to just like throw on a YouTube video and go do my dishes. It's probably Andreas Antonopoulos is probably like the main one who's doing that, right? Which is why he's like such an OG. Well, that's a great transition point because I love getting your thoughts on Bitcoin itself, but I'm also really interested in the fact that like your podcast, first of all, is really ambitious that you're like, okay, I'm interviewing a Bitcoiner every day, like 365 days. You've interviewed almost 500 people, I think you said, which is wild. So, I mean, I'm just interested in the journey, sort of like what made you want to do it a daily, like interview one person a day. And then I don't know, like how that's changed you, like from before you started the podcast to now, and just interested in like how you felt that journey has sort of changed you or what you've learned from it.
I came to the realization that Bitcoin is so important that I do not want to do anything else. I do not want to spend any time not thinking about Bitcoin. I do not want to spend any time in Fiat, in IT security, in whatever other industry you could spend your time in. I was in IT security before. And once you come to the realization that if you're in a Fiat system and you work in a Fiat system, you make that Fiat system stronger because you put your life's energy in there, even if your financial energy is completely out of that. That's why my first transition was, let's get my financial energy out. 100% I was in Bitcoin. But then I also got my financial and my actual life energy out of Bitcoin, out of the Fiat system, out of IT security into Bitcoin. 100% of my financial energy is in Bitcoin. 100% of my life's energy is in Bitcoin. That's kind of the setup I wanted to do. Now I even go one step further and earn most of my income already in Bitcoin and spend some of my expenses already in Bitcoin. I don't know the percentages. It's probably like, 20, 30% what I spend in Bitcoin and like 70% what I earn already in Bitcoin. So I have to make some exchanges between Bitcoin and Fiat to cover bills. But the thing is, you get sucked into Bitcoin. First, it's a unique diversifier. And then you get in like, okay, let's get a little bit more Bitcoin. All of a sudden, you like go all in Bitcoin. Then you work in Bitcoin. You do your stuff in Bitcoin. And I went really quick from hating Bitcoin, thinking it's a scam, to 3 years later, actually discovering it, buying my first like $100 of Bitcoin. It was in 2020. And then I needed a year to go all in. And then I needed 2 years to go also all in with my life's energy. And you have that transition of like being against Bitcoin, saying it's a scam, to having all your money in it, having all your life energy in it, transacting most of the times in Bitcoin and being completely Bitcoinicized. So that's why I did it, because I think Bitcoin is the most important thing. And I want to capture the essence, the people, and the time flair of this revolution. So this is why I did a Bitcoin podcast. Why daily is a good question. I started it because I had so many Bitcoin podcasts in a backlog, and now it's kind of my brand that I do it daily. So I cannot get it out now. But honestly, I enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of work, as you know, as a podcaster. You always think as someone that just maybe listens to podcasts, you're like, oh, like two people come together and then talk. It's like 1 hour work. No, like 1 hour work is one aspect of it. There's planning, there's the post-production. So actually, for me, 1 hour podcast is usually associated with like 5 hours of work. If you do that once a week, it's not too much. But if you do it every day, that's already 35 hours. That's already a full-time job. Then you have to do other things because of that. You all of a sudden have guest appearances on other podcasts. You all of a sudden go to conferences. You all of a sudden get requests from left and right. You all of a sudden have a thing that has to be managed. All of a sudden you have freelancers working for you. All of a sudden you have to manage those freelancers. You get more and more and more around that one simple thing of just talking with people. So it is a lot of work, and I love it every day a little bit more, and it changed me a lot. The podcast made me realize important values. It made me connect to traditional values more. It made me want to found a family more. It made me more driven, more motivated. The podcast. It gave me a mission, something to pursue in life, orange pilling people, and getting the Bitcoin message out there. So I think that's something Bitcoin gave me that is not as tangible. All those Bitcoiners coming together and gathering those information, gathering those thoughts, is something amazing that you can get from Bitcoin. It's a great thing to have Bitcoin.
I think that's awesome. I mean, that's really cool too that's done that for you, and has done something similar for me. And I think that's an awesome sort of ancillary benefit of people getting into Bitcoin. Like, I think the more you get into Bitcoin, the more it will find ways to change your life for the positive that aren't just financial, which is part of the reason why we all love it, and sort of, we call us a cult, right? Like, we kind of get a little crazy with how much we love it. What I don't know, this is probably a hard question to answer if you've interviewed, almost 500 people, but like, is there anything that stands out as like favorite interview, favorite sort of quote, or the most surprising or one of the most interesting things you've kind of learned from somebody?
The most influential for me was Jeff Booth, not only because it was the first big guest, but he hammered down that message of what are you doing if you are all in on Bitcoin but still working in fiat. And this was the interview that tipped me over the edge of saying, I will do this Bitcoin podcasting thing full time. I didn't start at full time podcasting, but this was very influential for me. Him saying the same message he always says, but he says it in such a great way that resonated with me so deeply, where I said, I have to do this Bitcoin thing. I cannot waste time outside of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most important topic, most important discovery in the universe. And I have to dedicate not only my money, but also my time towards that one mission.
I kind of feel the same way. Like, I've heard him say that, right? Like, if all your life and energy is in the fiat system, you're making that system stronger. And at first I kind of heard that, and I don't know, maybe it kind of like hurt me a little bit. I was like, it's like, that's probably true, but I don't want to admit that it's true. And so I was like, I can't shift all my time and energy into the Bitcoin system, obligations and responsibilities, etc. But then over time, I'm kind of like, he's probably right. And like, if I really want to like put my heart or my money where my mouth is, or not literally my money, but in this case, my life's force energy where my mouth is, like you said, I sort of am kind of trying to slowly do something I think similar to what your journey is, which is put more and more energy towards the Bitcoin system and more energy towards, espousing this thing that I believe in, like you said.
there's an important, there's one thing to consider here. Not everyone will work in Bitcoin because Bitcoin itself doesn't really need workers. Bitcoin just works in itself. So long term, we do not need 80%, 50%, even like 40% the workforce in Bitcoin. Why I'm saying that right now, that it's so important for me to put my life's energy in Bitcoin, is because I see the early potential of Bitcoin. And that's why I want to dedicate my life's energy now into Bitcoin. But there's not enough space and work for 8 billion people in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It will also not happen, of course. And if you are a doctor, if you are a lawyer, if you do whatever you are doing, if you're an engineer, this work is super important that you're doing. And it's probably best for you to keep doing what you love and keep doing what you're good at and just stack Bitcoin. That's what Bitcoin is for. But for those early maniacs like us that really cannot shut up about Bitcoin, they are going all in Bitcoin. They are going also with their life energy in Bitcoin. But for the majority of people, it's probably best to do what they are doing at the I mean, if you're an accountant, you can apply at Bitcoin companies and do your same job there. That's totally possible. If you're a software engineer, maybe you want to develop on Bitcoin scaling solutions and work for a Lightning Labs, whatever. You can do that. But what are doctors going to be? Like there are certain things that not everything has to be around Bitcoin. It sounds weird that I say that now, but the important thing is I took my decision to put everything into Bitcoin because I just cannot, I'm a maniac. But there are non-maniacs, normal people out there that just want to do a great job at what they are doing, saving lives as a doctor, being a mechanical engineer that repairs cars for a living. Like, that's a great thing to do. You should keep doing that if you love it and just save in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin ultimately is money. It's a life mission for us, but for someone else, it's just money. And it's good like that. Bitcoin doesn't have to be more than that for an individual person. It's so much more for us. It's almost a spiritual journey for some others. So it's an important distinction that I wanted to do here, that people don't have to quit their job to find something in Bit. Like if you really like cars and you're a mechanical engineer that repairs cars, and now you're like, oh, I have to learn software engineering to fit into this Bitcoin crowd thing. No, you don't. You can be a mechanical engineer and maybe orange bill your company, or put Bitcoin on the balance sheets if it's your company, or tell your customers about Bitcoin. And you are a soldier in the Bitcoin revolution by doing exactly that. There are different roles. Like, I think we are in an information war for Bitcoin. And what you are doing, what I'm doing, is basically being a digital soldier on the front. We are fighting right at the front where there is the fight happening between Bitcoin and Fiat. I'm going on crypto and finance channels also. Not that a lot, but here and there I go. So we are fighting the information war on a very confronted and on the front way. And then there's also people, I interviewed someone, it was really cool. He just goes around his town and orange pills people. He just starts conversation with people and talks about them, about different subsections, and then it's like, hey, there's also Bitcoin. And he just orange pills people around his town. All those people are really, really important for the Bitcoin mission. We need the authors, we need the podcasters, we need the mechanical engineer that just loves his job and talks about Bitcoin when there's a customer coming in. And maybe it's not a good strategy. Maybe you lose customers if you talk too much. But hey, it's your thing. Like you can do whatever you want. So my thing is just you don't have to work for a Bitcoin company or found a Bitcoin company. To be useful for the Bitcoin revolution, or to be part of the Bitcoin revolution, I think is a better way of saying it.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's a good message. Yeah, for sure. Like everybody can find their own small way to sort of, increase adoption or whatever. It doesn't have to be, like you said, all in with your whole life. Okay, well, is there anybody you haven't interviewed yet that you really want to? I know you've had Seyr, you've had a Jeff Booth, you had a lot of the big names. Anybody on the list who you're trying to get or haven't gotten yet?
Yes, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Oh man, good luck with that one.
I've invited him. I sent him emails, but he doesn't want to come on.
Oh, his email address bounced probably. Yeah, that's too bad.
He's ghosting me.
Yeah, that's too bad. All right, well, last question, which I always ask, which is you obviously have your channel. If anyone hasn't seen it, Robin's putting out awesome content, both on X, but mainly on YouTube. Obviously, there's a daily podcast coming out, Robin Seyr on YouTube. But outside of the content you put out, is there something else that you recommend to people, or either a source that you like to get your information, or something else that you'd recommend to other people to get information about Bitcoin?
I'm a really people-driven person. So if I want to find, I can get you a list of great Bitcoiners like Larry Lepar, Cypher Moose, Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, like they're all great. But I think more interesting is from a methodical standpoint, how to gather information about something you don't know about. People that watch this here probably are aware of some Bitcoin podcasts. They probably can manage how to get the Bitcoin content. How I do it with something new, for example, I will figure out who are the top people to talk about that on in a specific industry. Who are the key persons in an industry? And those key persons have usually podcast appearances somewhere. So I see, hey, this guy, let's make the example with you're just discovering Bitcoin. Then you're like, okay, Michael Saylor seems to be a key person in Bitcoin. Then you're giving in Michael Saylor Bitcoin interview. Then there's like 50 popping up directly, and you just click through the first 3 ones that have the most views, and you're like, okay, like I get it now. But who else? Like Seyr Moose seems also to be a big one. Jeff Booth. You go just down the list, and what you also see, like with Seyr, most of them have a book also. So you're like, okay, there's like those 5 to 10 people that are the key persons, and you see the language, you see what they are talking about, you see the topics that they are talking about. Then the next step is go deeper on that. Not only listening to podcasts. Podcast is amazing to get like a first teaser of the information, but then maybe they have a book. Then you figure out what are the 5 most influential books in an industry. Let's read those. And you're going down the line of like, oh, those are interesting books. And then you can decide, do I want to go deeper on a topic? Do I have enough? With Bitcoin, it's usually like, it's just a starting of the journey. And then it goes down like, oh, there's like not only the first and third and fifth podcast, but there's also like a 20th podcast that is also really cool. There are, I see those on YouTube. There are people that are really YouTube podcast Bitcoin junkies. I go to another podcast, and there's a guy that always comments on my comments, also comments there. Like they're all over the place because they just love listening to Bitcoin stuff. Because it's so early, like, okay. But the important thing here is we can digest now information in a very nice way, because we can figure out who are the top people in an industry, kind of get a feeling for what's important. And from those conversations of who they're talking about, what they're talking about, why they're talking about it, and how they're talking about it, you get a lot of information out there, and then just dive deeper with the books. And if you want to go deeper on that, it might be also interesting to write your own thoughts down and work with those books, and maybe find courses, maybe find deeper academies. There are deeper things that you usually can go on. but books are usually already like very nice to cover information. That's my advice of how to get information, how to figure an industry out, and how I would also say, hey, figure that out with Bitcoin also.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. Don't just give a man a fish to teach him how to fish. Like, here's how to dive deep on a new topic when you want to know the information. And like we touched on earlier, I think you're right that right now is probably the best time in history to have easy access to as much Bitcoin information as possible. So it's fun diving in and finding out all the different resources, like you said. Robin, this is awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate the work you do spreading the Bitcoin message. And I enjoy your show. You're an inspiration in terms of like how much you've grown with your content and how much you've grown the channel and all that stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's been super fun talking to you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.